explained, quote, Hamas didn't really want to make a deal, adding that Israel is, quote, going to have to finish the job. Take a listen.
Is the U.S. giving up on Gaza in negotiations?
Yeah, Gaza, they pulled out of Gaza. They pulled out in terms of negotiating. It was too bad. Hamas didn't really want to make a deal. I think they want to die.
We have watched this process play out over the last 6 months or so. I think you get a clear sense of where we are right now. And that is that Hamas understands, as the president indicated, that if Hamas releases this remaining 20 live hostages and other 30 bodies that are being held by the terror organization and some of its allies in Gaza, that its leverage is gone. And that then comes the hard question of who runs Gaza afterwards. And I think if you look at where Hamas is right now, the criticism of Israel about, nutrition in Gaza, the body count that continues to grow from an urban asymmetric warfare that Israel doesn't seem to have full control over right now, you get a sense that Hamas feels like they're in a good place. Now, that good place is going to be fleeting, in my view. If Donald Trump tells the Israelis, you can do what you wish in the Gaza Strip now, I'm not restraining you any longer, I'm not holding you to the terms of Stephen Witkoff's negotiations in Gaza, that changes the equation. The Israelis stop fighting with one hand tied behind their back, which has been the case. Really, I mean, you could track that back to October 7th. They've been trying very hard to kind of tiptoe around the Gaza Strip, both for the population of Gaza and to try to preserve the lives of the hostages. But they may have arrived at a position now, as they understand Hamas's endgame, they may have made the decision that it's time to defeat this terror organization in Gaza, to remove them permanently from the Gaza Strip. And that really does appear to be a shift in the rhetoric of Donald Trump, and we'll see what happens now from the Israeli side. I think you have to understand, the Israelis have tiptoed around the situation in Gaza. I know there's been a lot of talk about what the Israelis have done or what they haven't done. There are these allegations of malnutrition. There's, allegations of, the killing of innocents. But if you look at the way that the Israelis have operated, they have been unbelievably precise. They have been extremely careful. Maybe they're going to be less careful now as they start to target specifically the tunnels of the Gaza Strip. They have tried to not hit them for fear of destabilizing infrastructure above ground. But I think they've also been careful because they're trying not to kill Israeli hostages. Maybe they start to fight in a different way, in a much more unrestrained way, in an effort to end this war more quickly. Because the more careful that Israel has been over this last 650 days, the longer this has stretched out. This has not redounded to Israel's benefit. The more careful they are, the longer this thing is the longer the war has stretched on. It's not been good for their casualty counts. The KIAs have mounted, and I think they've hit a frustration point. You can see it. So now, again, it'll be interesting to see what the IDF announces in terms of their strategy moving forward. The very presence of GHF is probably what has sparked all of this controversy about nutrition inside the Gaza Strip. Because what GHF is, it's a private entity, right? And they are trying to distribute aid inside Gaza. They're trying to make sure that the aid bypasses Hamas, and they're trying to make sure that the aid bypasses the UN. And the UN has been an enabler for Hamas since Hamas took over the Gaza Strip back in 2007. There is a partnership, and it is Orwellian when you think about the fact that the UN is there, or at least it should be there, to try to promote peace in the region. And instead what they've done is they have empowered an Iran-backed terrorist organization. And so what you have right now is GHF trying to deprive the UN of agency. They're trying to deprive Hamas of agency. And as they've done that, you see Hamas opening fire in some cases, and spreading disinformation inside the Gaza Strip, trying to make things more chaotic, trying to prevent GHF aid from getting to that estimated 2 million person population. For Hamas leaders left right now. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't a broader organization that is engaging in this kind of urban warfare, this asymmetric warfare that is absolutely taking its toll on the IDF. But I do begin to question right now how much is left of Hamas and whether this is something that, that could sustain the Gaza Strip, even if the Israelis withdrew. And so I think that right now, when people talk about Hamas, I think they talk about something that really doesn't exist any longer. It's something else that has taken this place, but yet we continue to see networks like Al Jazeera, owned by the Qataris, promoting Hamas as something that's still viable. I think we need to have a reassessment of who's in charge, how things are being run, and I do wonder whether we may be reaching an endgame now that Donald Trump has kind of given the Israelis the green light to do what's necessary to end this conflict once and for all.
Insistent that food be distributed in Gaza without the participation of terrorists. Food be distributed in Gaza without the participation of terrorists. British foreign minister and other international figures should be leveled at the United Nations, which is refusing to allow food to be distributed in Gaza by any measure other than with Hamas. We are collaborating with Hamas from the very beginning. We have right now some 900 semi-trailers filled with humanitarian aid, which the UN refuses to allow to enter Gaza because they insist that it be turned over to Hamas. We insist that it not be. The UN is tendentious. The UN is tendentious. They are lying, and they have the people of Gaza on their conscience. They are responsible because they have been participating with Hamas from the very beginning. In some cases, it's understood because Hamas is threatening them. Hamas is a ghoulish terror organization that threatens people, that kills people. And many of the operatives that the UN has been using in Gaza have been threatened themselves. And therefore, they don't want to vie away from the process that they've been using until now. But the fact of the matter is, you saw those pictures. You have thousands of tons of humanitarian aid waiting to get into Gaza. But what the UN prefers to do, as it does almost daily in its condemnations of Israel again and again and again, is to point a finger at Israel and say that Israel is to blame for starvation in Gaza, when in fact, the people who should be blamed for preventing this humanitarian aid from being distributed in Gaza are the UN themselves. You mentioned numbers, thousands of people starving. The UN person in charge of the facts and figures is ignoring, whenever he releases his facts, it's Tom Fletcher. He ignores the fact that all of his figures he receives from Hamas, from the Hamas Health Agency, what it's called. That's a terrorist organization. So he just repeats these numbers ad nauseum from Hamas. They're then picked up by the legacy media. Then they're repeated by international politicians, and they become fact. But they're not, in fact, they're fallacious. Tom Fletcher said just a few weeks ago that in 48 hours, 14,000 children would die of starvation. Nobody died of starvation in those